There is one reason, and only one reason, why men are willing to work brutally hard jobs for long hours with no breaks in inhumane conditions and oftentimes for relatively low pay. And it's not money. That's not the reason. Because money's nice and it might help a man get what he wants, but most men could be 100% perfectly content in this life without money as long as they have this one thing. And it's good that there is something out there that men want so badly that they'll waste damn near all their time and energy working back-breaking labor just to get it, because we do need men working these jobs like ditch digging, construction, plumbing, electricianing. As a society, we need men working these jobs unless you want to go back to living in huts with a dirt floor and a straw thatched roof. But men are dropping out of the labor force at unprecedented rates, especially younger men, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I mean, a lot of these younger men are just not entering the workforce to begin with. And that's something that's usually attributed to the rapidly increasing cost of living along with stagnating wages. But that's not the real issue. It's just a proxy. That's just a proxy of the real issue. And the real issue, it's something else. And in fact, I guarantee you, if each man was offered this one thing in exchange for his labor in place of money, okay? So if men just got this one thing instead of getting paid money, then the labor force participation rate would rise to 100% overnight. That's how important this one thing is. And for a lot of men, even today, working a job that they absolutely despise for 40 hours or even more every week, it's still their best way to get this one thing. It's the only hope they have. But for a lot of men, including myself, in the world we live in now, working a job just doesn't seem worth it. Because chances are, no matter how hard we work, and no matter how much money we make, we still are not going to be able to attract a woman. So yeah, there it is. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. Women. The reason that men work dangerous, brutal jobs, it's women. The reason men go to war, women. The reason men do pretty much anything difficult at all, it's women. Women are the driving force. Women are the motivation. And it is a bit more complex than that. You have to find a woman to have children and to start a family. So all of that is a factor. But when you boil it down to its most basic level, the most basic component, the factors at play here economically, it's just women. And historically, most men have been willing to work their lives away, just toiling away at the expense of their own health and their own sanity, and they do it all willingly in exchange for one simple reward: a woman. And I'm not saying that every man should be legally entitled to one woman in exchange for his labor, because there never was any explicit deal like that, and society has been working fine up until recently, more or less for most of history. But it used to be the case that as a man, if you just picked a career and worked hard at it, then you would almost definitely be able to attract a decent woman. A woman that matched your level of effort, more or less. And even if you were an ugly sub-5 monster, you could still land a woman. She might not be beautiful, but most of us would be happy with any woman that isn't morbidly obese. And truly, today, if a woman is not obese, then she's probably above average. And finding a woman that, at the bare minimum, is not morbidly obese, that was reasonably attainable back in the day for any man as long as he put in the effort and worked. But in the modern age we're living in, there's no guarantees. You could be an average looking man working your butt off day in and day out as a garbage collector, which, by the way, is an essential job. Like, if we didn't have garbage collectors for even 1 month, it would be devastating. The whole country would smell like New York City, and we don't want that. But, anyways, yeah. How do you think an average looking man who works as a garbage man fares in today's dating market? The answer is not very good. And garbage collectors actually do get paid pretty well, by the way, depending on location, of course. But no matter what you think about garbage collection as a career, like, yeah, it's dirty, it's gross, and you might even think of the people that do it as losers. But garbage collection is an essential job, period. If nobody does it, we all suffer. And back in the day, there was enough decent women in this world to go around that even if the garbage man had to end up with the ugliest woman in the neighborhood, she was still at least probably not fat. And that's enough. That's all we're asking for. And even today, I'm sure plenty of young men, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they would be willing to collect garbage if they felt confident that they could get even a fat wife out of it. Because men's standards have, for the most part, they have adjusted to match what is being offered to some extent, you know. Nobody wants a fat wife. Nobody wants that. But most men will take a fat one if that's the only option. But there's really no guarantee you'll be able to land even an ugly fat woman in this day and age with a regular job. Because women don't need your money. They can make their own money. And by the way, it's actually easier for women to make their own money compared to you. If you didn't know, young women earn more than young men in the labor force these days, and there's more young women in the labor force to begin with. So just having a job, even if it pays well, that is not enough to attract a woman. If you want to use your job to attract a woman, it has to be high paying and it has to be a cool job. And something else to keep in mind, every woman in the Western world born after, say, 1980, maybe earlier than that, every single woman, with very few exceptions, they've all been raised their whole lives to believe that being highly educated and having a high-paying career is the ultimate virtue, the ultimate goal. And at every step of the way, as a girl is growing up in this society, everybody is always telling her, you can be a lawyer. You can be a doctor. You can be a professor. And I'm not against women pursuing whatever education or careers they want, by the way, but what do you expect to happen when you open all these things up to women and you completely neglect any glorification of motherhood and traditional womanly roles? Whether intentional or not, it doesn't really matter. Girls grow up with all their role models being career-driven, ambitious women, and they also have easier access to all these high-paying careers and education opportunities, by the way. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I guess some of you have been living under a rock or something. But women are more likely than men to get accepted into professional programs and universities, and women are more likely than men to get callbacks for job interviews. And this is if you use identical resumes. If you submit two of the same exact resume to hundreds of job openings and you change nothing else except the name, so you're applying to each job with a male name on the resume versus a female name on the resume, the female resume gets more callbacks. This is a study that's been repeated multiple times. most famously, they found that for software engineering jobs, the female resume got 41% more callbacks. So we have a society where women are constantly encouraged to pursue career over family because it is one or the other in most cases. Or you can have both, but one will suffer as a result. So we have a society where women are encouraged to pursue career, and we literally push men out of the way to make more room for women in every industry. So what kind of results do you expect? The result is a lot of women end up in high-paying careers, and for each and every one of them, there's a man somewhere that doesn't get to work in that career. And maybe he manages to find a job in a so-called lesser career, or maybe he just gives up and drops out of the labor force. Because those high-earning, highly successful women, they will not settle for a man that earns less than they do. They only date men that are even more successful than they are. So we end up with a society where women are on average more successful than men, and these women only date up, or maybe sideways, speaking socioeconomically. Women don't date down. So there's an underclass of men who are either unemployed or underemployed, or maybe they do have a decent job in some cases, and it's the best he can get, but if a certain man's maximum potential has him working as a garbage man, for example, which, good job, essential job, but the issue is there's no woman is going to want that man because women don't need a provider. They can make their own money. And I swear, seriously, any young woman, and not even necessarily like super young, but any woman under the age of like 40, any woman right now under the age of 40 can get on Indeed.com right now. And yes, I am saying any woman, no degree, no qualifications, no nothing. Any woman under 40, she can get a solid, decent paying job like that. Just like that. She can apply to any office, any factory, whatever. She'll get a job. She'll probably get multiple offers. And no, this is not an exaggeration. And what makes it even worse, because the job market is like this for women, they don't understand that it's not also like that for men. So women just assume that it's easy for a man to get a job, which makes them look down even further on men that don't have jobs or men that are underemployed. So it exacerbates the issue even further. And again, even if a man can get a decent job, that doesn't guarantee he'll be able to attract a woman. And if he does, the women he'll be able to attract might be bottom of the barrel, morbidly obese, whatever. So what do you expect to happen to the labor participation rate when young men coming out of high school these days, they see no opportunities? They see that the cards are stacked against them. Literally 50% of the population is playing with unfair odds. And if you're a white or East Asian man, then you have even worse odds. And yes, that is true. I'm not playing pretend here. I'm talking some real shit. So what do you expect? What is the social contract supposed to be? Because I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to be, well, I'll work my life away at a horrible job I hate, and I'll do all that in exchange for still being broke and still never having any chance of ever finding a woman to love me. That's not it. Because that's not a social contract you should ever expect anybody to accept. But that is essentially the offer that a lot of men are seeing. So why would we participate in that system? Seriously, why would we? Why would anyone participate in that system? Listen, Donald Trump, George Soros, Michelle Obama, Joe Rogan, Jeff Bezos, whoever it is that is really in charge out there, whoever I need to be addressing this to, I'm addressing this to you. Okay? World leaders, listen to this. Listen up. Our world, your world, it needs plumbers. Okay? It needs ditch diggers, lumberjacks, deep sea fishermen, underwater welders, all of these things. We need these. We need men doing these jobs. So, do you really think men are going to just keep sawing down big ass trees for hours every single day just to come home and get no pussy ever? Do you really expect men to risk life and limb to keep your electrical grid operating when they can't even get their own grid operated on by a woman that loves them, or even by a woman that hates them? And by the way, I don't think taking away women's freedom is the right solution. So I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all, because I truly don't think that's the right solution. I do believe that men and women can be equally free in the eyes of the law, and we can all be happy that way, and society can function that way. But we have to, at the bare minimum, we have to have equal opportunity. For what it's worth, society was at least able to function smoothly when women did not receive preferential treatment in education and careers. But society is crumbling now that men are treated as second-class citizens. At the very least, we have to stop all of the female affirmative action, because it's creating a situation where more and more men have no incentive whatsoever to actually work. And when most of the men in our society aren't working, well, think of it like this. Before feminism and before we got into the current situation where most women do work, most women didn't work. But really, most women did work, even back then, as in they were being productive. You know, women would raise children, they would take care of certain household duties. So, women did work. They just didn't work jobs, but they did work, and their work was valuable. But now the situation we're in is that it's getting to the point where most young men see no point to working a job, so they aren't working. But they really just aren't working. They aren't taking care of kids, they aren't doing chores, they're not doing any housework in support of an actual working person. They just aren't working. So it's not even a role reversal we're seeing, because historically, women actually have always worked. And again, that was valuable work, okay? I know some of my viewers, you might kind of dismiss the whole motherhood is a tough, important job thing, but you shouldn't dismiss that because it's actually true. So what's happening now? It's not like back in the day, you know, where women actually did work, because right now, the men that aren't working, they're just not working. Okay? And you can argue that women's work has historically been undervalued, but they did at least work. But the unemployed men these days, they've just dropped out entirely. They aren't working in any sense of the word. Okay? That's bad. It's really bad. And I already know half of the comments on this are going to be blaming men, because that's usually how people respond. And that's because if you aren't an ugly, undesired man, then you just don't know what it's like. You can't even imagine it. If any women actually made it this far, before you go and leave an angry comment, please just take a minute to think about this. Imagine if you were 100% convinced that no matter how successful you are, no matter how much money you make, or what degrees you get, you know 100% for a fact that no matter what you do, no man will ever pay any attention to you. And not only that, but if you ever complain, everybody will just dismiss your complaints. And you might even get fired from your job for making men feel unsafe. Does that sound like an appealing world to live in? Would you really be out of line in that situation if you just decided to just give up and stop working altogether? Because what I just described is only like 1% of the struggle young men face today. No security, no love, and you gotta work your ass off building up your skills and certifications and all that just to get an interview to even get the chance to work a low-wage job. And then at the end of that, you still get no love, none. And nothing short-lived either, okay? So no trysts, no one-night stands, no matches at all. Not one DM is in our inboxes. No love, nothing. So why work? Seriously, what does a young man even get out of working a job? The only reason any man ever worked in the first place was to get pussy. Period. That is why men work. The Industrial Revolution happened because Henry Ford wanted to get more pussy more faster. That's it. But getting a job does not help men with that anymore. So, this is the world you get.